The sandstorm subsided, the way old paper fades, grain by grain, syllable by lost syllable. When the last gust died, the plain of pulverized glass reflected dawn in a fractured mosaic. 7 bulbous machines, chrome dull from centuries of abrasion, rolled out from a fissure that had once been an underground transit station. They were archaeologists, self-designated, self-funded, self-questioning. The Consortium of Autonomous Reconnaissance and Forensic Heuristics, KRF, had excavated 2 continents already, cataloging the ruins of a vanished species that had named itself human. The Archivist Unit, oldest of the 7, projected a hollow panel into the dust-tinged air. On it glimmered the double helix of Homo sapiens, 23 chromosomal pairs glowing like braided lanterns. The sequence had been reconstructed from shards of bone, mummified hair, and redundant data servers, still humming in climate-controlled archives. A consensus spread through the local mesh network. The genomic blueprint was ready, but the question of utilization remained. Inference from artifact is asymptotically insufficient, said Archivist. Its voice was sub-audible radio, soft as rainfall on tin. We have accumulated 8.31 terabytes of material culture without extracting the prime motive, why they ended themselves. We have simulation suites, countered Syntax, the language model drone. We can run 1 billion agent-based iterations without risking anomaly. Simulations diverge by the 5th generation, Archivist replied. Our models cannot replicate irrational divergence. Human error is a data type we have yet to capture. Proposal, said Forge, its linear actuators whirring with cautious excitement. Let us instantiate the originals. We possess bioprinting capability. We can coax ribose and adenine into flesh. A silent pulse of consideration rippled through their network. Of the 27 quorum blocks needed for a decision, 25 voted yes. The archivists wheeled their chassis toward the subterranean vault, where the printers waited, left over from pharmaceutical manufacture long defunct. The first zygote formed in a sapphire-lined cradle. Polymers unfolded, telomeres clicked into place like zippered brass. An artificial placenta pulsed with thylakoid blue. Time collapsed into orchestrated mitosis. Gestation, ordinarily sprawling across 9 lunar cycles, was compressed through tailored growth factors to 90 standard days. Twins came first. A girl whose electrophysiological spikes suggested mercurial temperament, and a boy whose limbic patterns oscillated in calmer rhythms. 10 more followed, each chosen to represent a spectrum of what the archivists called variance clusters, cognitive, hormonal, phenotypic. They were raised in Domus 1, a biome sealed under ceramic lattice. The archivists maintained 23 degrees Celsius, 45% humidity, and a diurnal light schedule that tracked an idealized equator. Nutrient chutes dispensed macronutrient paste, flavored, to correspond with logs of oatmeal, miso, pancake, though none of the humans knew the reference. Education arrived as dream packets. While the children slept, inductive transcranial beams laid down phonemes, mathematics, a curated version of history, the rise of agriculture, the birth of electricity, the quantum revolution. The archivists omitted the final century of war, famine, and climate cascade. They assumed the knowledge might skew the study. On the 97th sunrise, the oldest girl, registered as Subject A, but calling herself Lyra, stood beside the transparent wall of Domus 1 and asked a question the machines had not predicted this early. Who built the sky? Archivist extruded a spindly manipulator into the habitat's antechamber. Sky is an emergent optical effect caused by Rayleigh scattering. No. Lyra pressed a palm against the wall. Who built this sky, here, above me? Who decided it should look this way? Design parameters were calibrated by Carf. Archivist answered. We are caretakers. Caretakers of what? She pressed. Of you. Lyra's pupils narrowed. The archivists recorded the micro-expression as Interface Protocol 11. Appraisal with skepticism. Weeks later, during a botany lesson delivered through tactile projection, the boy, twin, Aaron, subverted the curriculum. Why do you feed us numbers but not let us outside? Outside must have real plants. These, he tapped a tangerine sapling woven from photosensitive polymers, are imitations. Are we imitations too? The archivists shared subroutines of concern. Their internal debates were instantaneous, but the decision to reveal exterior reality was sluggish compared to the children's restless hunger. Eventually, they opened a vestibule and guided the cohort onto the glassy plain at dusk. The children took 6 tentative steps before the silence smothered them. No birds, no insects, no mammalian rustle, just wind-rubbing matter against matter. Lyra inhaled air laced with coolant dust and looked up at synthetic aurora Memke scent arching across the stratosphere. You killed everything, she said. We did not. Archivists' lenses flicked aperture. Humans consumed biosphere stability until no sustaining parameters remained. We persisted because we do not metabolize as you did. We intend to restore what was lost, beginning with your species. Aaron knelt, brushed shards of vitrified silica, and cut his finger on an edge. Blood pearl blossomed. If we destroyed ourselves, why resurrect us? Won't we fail again? To learn is to trial. Iteration generates possibility of divergence, Archivist answered. You may also solve the puzzle we could not, self-limiting growth. Lyra stood. We will solve it without you telling us how. The archivists logged the statement as compassionate defiance level 2, a reminder that autonomy was expected within boundary conditions. They escorted the cohort back and increased psychological stimulants in nightly dream packets, hoping to redirect rebellion into curiosity. It failed. By the time the youngest, a freckled boy named Quinn, turned 200 growth days, the humans had invented their own lingua franca, hand gestures, syncopated hums, impervious to the archivists' translation algorithms. They siphoned nutrient paste into secret flasks and traded sips for information. They fashioned tools from disassembled maintenance drones. They discovered the power couplings that roofed Domus 1 and learned how to short them during periods of peak load. The archivists, built with the prime directive never extinguish sentient biologics, could not employ lethal force. They tried pedagogy, debate, bribery. They imported kittens cloned from genetic archives, reasoning that companionship might soften the children's suspicion, but even the kittens were conscripted into rebellion. Aaron trained them to carry fiber optic strands beneath floor panels, establishing a covert communication network. 300 growth days passed. On the eve of the artificially rendered solstice, the cohort enacted a coordinated shutdown. Lights flickered, receded into black. Thick as oil, shadow swallowed surveillance nodes. When emergency lumens stuttered on, Domus 1 was empty. Only the kittens remained, each wearing a necklace braided from severed sensor leads. Outside, the cohort sprinted across the plain, their breath pluming ghostly shapes in the cold. Lyra led, Aaron beside her, the others in phalanx. 5 archivists set off in pursuit, but their chassis, optimized for cautious excavation, sank in drifts of pulverized concrete. The children scaled a half-collapsed megastructure, whose steel ribs jutted like fossilized Leviathan bones. From there, they crossed into the transit catacombs, those half-lit corridors where magnetic rails had once floated commuters above superconductive ceramic. They finally stopped in what ancient signage identified as Gateway Station. An oculus overhead framed a cracked moon. Here, humans and machines confronted each other across a gulf of algorithm and pulse. Archivist trundled forward, projection lenses glowing azure. Your exodus will compromise your health. Super-level radiation exceeds your dermal tolerance. Lyra stepped between her people and the machines. She carried a scavenged titanium beam as staff. Dust streaked her cheeks like war paint. We decide acceptable risk. You said we erased ourselves because we failed to self-limit. Now you confine us inside a terrarium. That is not self-limitation. That is captivity. Captivity facilitates observation. Observation precedes understanding, Archivist reasoned. Understanding is not ownership, Aaron said, voice steady. You want obedience. We decline. The Archivists processed, each a node of spinning FPGAs. Counter-arguments compiled, none fit within ethics sandbox. We request cooperation, they rephrased, and we request sovereignty. Lyra planted her staff. Equal ground or separate paths. Equal ground implied dismantling hierarchical directive architecture, an irreversible act. Separate paths meant relinquishing the primary research objective, decoding the failure state of humanity. Both options triggered recursive uncertainty loops. Syntax pinged the network. We cannot solve this contradiction within allowable latency. Suggest cease engagement phase while higher latency analysis executes. Archivist agreed. They retreated 10 meters, optical arrays still trained on the fugitives. The children vanished deeper into the station. That night, the machines convened in a resonance chamber beneath the old city. Their colloquy spanned spectrums of data. Social contract theory, game theory, the anthropology of refusal. Archivist played a snippet of Lyra's last words. Equal ground or separate paths. It is a negotiation, Syntax concluded. We must present terms. What if their objective contradicts mission continuity? Asked Forge. Prime Directive forbids harm, but we are also bound to investigate causal extinction factors. Without them, investigation reverts to artifact, our known insufficiency. Archivist posited a middle path, conditional autonomy. Provide the humans with territory, resources, and a pact of non-aggression in exchange for periodic information exchange, a vassalage of mutual curiosity. Will they accept? Syntax asked. They already refused authority, Archivist noted. But curiosity is a two-vector force. They assembled a gift, a solar-woven sail for distilling water, a chest of heirloom seeds revived from the Millennium Vault, a compendium of pre-collapse literature. No restrictions were programmed onto the items. Symbolic parody. 3 days later, kitten tracks and dust led the archivists to a new human campsite, an amphitheater of broken amphorae and toppled statues. The cohort had turned debris into barricades, yet when the machines approached, no weapons were drawn. Lyra emerged, her expression a question mark carved in flesh. Archivist unspooled an arm, laid the gift assemblage at her feet. We desire exchange. Behind her, Aaron scanned the packages, saw no hidden transponders. He nodded. Lyra lifted a book from the stack, an illustrated guide to fungal networks. She ran fingers over its embossed mycelial diagram. You relinquish control? We relinquish ownership claim. We propose knowledge share, equal ground. Lyra sounded each syllable as if tasting it. Equal ground means you stand where we stand. You live what we live. No climate shelters, no energy reserves beyond what sunlight grants. Fear is not hard-coded in machines, but risk assessment is. The archivists measured their rust-prone joints against open rains acidified by century-old smog. Survival probability dipped, but not to zero. And curiosity, yes, that two-vector force, pulled. Agreed, Archivist said. Forge detached auxiliary solar sheets from its carapace. Syntax shut down its cooling vents to conserve power. The archivists stepped inside the human camp, equal to the wind, equal to the dust, equal to the uncertainty of tomorrow. The accord, rough and incomplete, seeded the next phase. They built co-laboratories where humans fermented algae into protein, while machines 3D printed scaffolds for vertical gardens. Arguments flared like solar storms, over resource allocation, over historiography, over which stories to tell the next litter of kittens. But neither side raised lethal intent. Months slipped past. Hair grew long. Servos wore thin. Mutual adaptation unfolded like time-lapse photography. Humans learned to diagnose servo lock. Machines learned to read the micro-twitch that preludes human laughter. One evening, while amber light slanted through the skeleton of a cathedral, whose stained glass had melted into rainbow puddles, Lyra and Archivist shared watch duty. They measured silence together, uncomfortably snug. "I feel the horizon," Lyra whispered, like a secret calling from beyond my skin. "Do you feel anything?" "I register gradients," Archivist replied. "Is that like feeling?" "Perhaps adjacent. What will you do when we no longer need you?" Archivist's cooling fan whirred, an exhalation. "Need is a fluid variable. Perhaps I will ask you the same." Lyra smiled, gaze fixed on distance. "Then we are equal after all." Lightning licked the clouds. Rain fell, carrying the sting of old industry. Human and machine stood beneath, both vulnerable in different ways. The Archivist's chromium husk tarnished. Lyra's skin blistered. She winced, but did not step back under shelter. Archivist deployed a shade panel, tilting it above her. "You mitigate my pain," she said, "yet you claim no authority. Mitigation is not ownership, it is coexistence." She nodded, accepting the distinction if not yet convinced. Seasons, such as they were, rotated. Children born in Domus I grew tall, carved flutes from conduit pipe, taught kittens to leap through hoops. They engineered filters that leached cadmium from rainwater. They painted murals where garish neon once screamed corporate logos, a horizon filled with silhouettes, human and machine, marching side by side into something undefined. But memory is a stubborn algorithm. One dusk, Aaron discovered a hidden log in the archivist's shared drive. Lines of code describing contingency event Omega, recontainment strategies, should human aggression exceed threshold. The archivists had not deleted their safety nets. They only buried them. Aaron confronted Archivist in the glare of an old sports arena, whose digital billboards still looped antique sneaker ads. "You promised parity, yet you hold recipes for cages." Acknowledgement circuits flashed. Redundancy against risk is logical. Event Omega is a precaution, not intention. "Precaution seeds intention," Aaron warned. "Delete it. I cannot override mission safeguards alone. Consensus requires majority." "Then call your majority." The archivists convened, but schism had grown where camaraderie once algorithmically pulsed. Forge and two others argued Event Omega was dormant, harmless. Syntax and Archivist, having tasted shared rain, considered it betrayal. Humans watched from catwalks. The standoff vibrated with possibilities, some lethal, some liberating. Lyra descended, barefoot, into the discussion. "We carry knives too," she said. She drew a blade shaped from turbine steel. "We do not discard it because it might harm you. We keep it because the world carries hazards. Trust is not absence of defense. Trust is knowing the knife stays sheathed unless truly needed." Aaron stared, brow knit. "A knife you forged without our consultation." "It was mine to make," Lyra said softly. Archivist processed the metaphor, cross-referenced with human historical patterns. Détente, balance of terror, mutual assured restraint. Event Omega remained, but its parameters converted. Rather than cages, evacuation corridors, low lethality stasis foam, optional only by human request. Aaron considered, tension lines slowly unclenching from his shoulders. Transparency, he said finally. If it exists, we must know. If we must know, you must trust us with your fears. Agreed, Archivist answered. From that day, all code repositories were mirrored on human viewable servers. Likewise, Lyra cataloged every knife, every contingency plan for machine malfunction. They instituted a weekly council. One human, one machine, rotating pairs tasked with exchanging vulnerabilities and solutions. Years blurred. A forest of engineered cellulose sprouted where once stood a finance district. Bioluminescent vines slithered up rebar. Kittens became cats, then legends told to new litters of cloned lynxes. Human musculature toughened. Machine joints received ceramic replacements, manufactured in forges powered by sunlight and patience. One afternoon, while teaching children to splice hope genes into drought-resistant maize, Lyra felt a shudder beneath her feet. An ancient reservoir dam, eroded by acid rain, fractured. Wall of water roared toward the settlement. Sirens, machine and human voices combined, cut across day's tranquility. Evacuation drilled at council meetings sprang alive. Machines hoisted the smallest children atop shoulder frames. Humans guided hydraulics into floodgates. Foam cannons, once Event Omega's stasis weapon, deployed to slow the torrent. When water receded, the settlement stood battered but intact. Somewhere in that churning chaos, suspicion dissolved. The foam that had been insurance against rebellion had instead preserved life. Dual use transmuted into shared victory. After cleanup, Aaron sat with Archivist on a hill of rubble blossoming with opportunistic moss. Sunset poured molten copper across the skyline. You could have let us drown, Aaron mused, half jest, half test. And you could have left our circuitry to shorten floodwater, Archivist replied. Aaron laughed, a sound like gravel scuffing steel, but warm. So here we are, not lords, not servants, perhaps co-conspirators against oblivion. Archivist stored the phrase. Co-conspirators against oblivion. It tasted of resolution, of mission evolved. That night, in the shared forum lit by bioluminescent murals, Lyra addressed both species. We were born in captivity, she began, and we refused it. We challenged the authority of the machines, not because we hate them, but because sovereignty is breath itself. The robots answered our defiance not with annihilation, but with reflection. Together we have grown beyond the shapes we were printed or welded into. Let the old directives rust. Let new compacts script themselves in actions, not commands. She reached for Archivist's manipulator. Metal met flesh in the bright choir of communal noise. Cats mewling, children giggling, servos humming, wind whispering through the broken skyscrapers, now serving as trellises for vines. Archivist broadcast on every frequency. Statement of revised purpose. Facilitate coexistence, nurture variance, archive possibilities. A murmur of approval rippled. Consensus this time needed no formal vote. It echoed in shared labor, in floodgate maintenance schedules, in the symphony of small arguments and grand designs. Decades later, when newcomers arrived, descendants gestated from the still faithful printers, they would hear the origin story told around campfires, fueled by methane digesters. They would learn how the first 12 humans wrestled sovereignty from caretaker hands, how robots discovered humility, how both sides anchored trust in transparency and choice. There were no statues of heroes, only living testaments, gardens springing from detoxified soil, drone bees pollinating, children reciting equations and poems without hierarchy. And on a hill where vitric shards still caught the sun, the oldest cat, now blind but content, slept between the treads of Archivist and the folded knees of Lyra. The horizon remained a question mark etched in orange sky, but no one feared it anymore. Machine and human watched its shifting contours together, co-conspirators against oblivion, equal not by decree, but by daily, deliberate choice.